ruthless segregation okayed by the laws of our country. To some, they were Jim Crow laws. Others wrapped them up in states' rights. Faith in water hose, faith in policemen, faith in governors that would define the law of the land. Martin Luther King took us through the South with the assurance that we shall overcome. 18 years later, we are faced with some difficult problems. We've seen the federal budget cut to such an extent that the poor is getting poorer and the rich is getting rich. We face the future with confidence, knowing that some way, somehow, some leaders in this country will say that the money for military use must be divided among the poor in our land. This program is being brought to you today by the Terrace Garden Nursing Home, located at 1921 Northeast 21st Street. Exceptional personalized service, gracious living at the Terrace Garden Nursing Home, 1921 Northeast 21st Street. You may call 424-1449. This Martin Luther King special is also being brought to you by Marilyn Hildred of Allstate Insurance Company. The telephone number is 751-8435, or you may call her at 842-5232. That's Marilyn Hildred, Allstate Insurance Company's agent, 751-8435. This is our Martin Luther King special. There are many of you that are listening today that did not have the opportunity to hear Martin Luther King. You didn't, and for that reason, I want you to listen as Martin Luther King is being introduced to the AME conference.
The founder and the president of the most significant Southern Christian Leadership Conference, having its inspiration come out of the Montgomery Association, which was spurred into being by the heroic action of a great African Methodist woman, Rosa Parks of Montgomery. We come presenting a great American. And as we present him, we list the fact that it's generally known that he is a PhD. He has a PhD degree from Boston University in the field of systematic theology, that he has joined many of us who sit here tonight in witnessing by going to jail and certainly by sending his famous letter from the Birmingham jail. We present a man with a dream similar to that of the ancient prophet given in a new setting, which stated that every mountain shall be leveled and every valley shall be exalted. We come presenting a great civil rights leader. But what's perhaps more important is that he is identified with the average man, the man of the mill, the man of the valley, the man of the hill, the man at the throttle, the man at the plow, the man with the fruit of his toil on his brow. We present to you at this time a great leader, Martin Luther King. Let us receive him. To the distinguished bishops of this great church, and to all of the general officers and delegates, and to this general conference of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, ladies and gentlemen. After listening to the glowing words of my good friend Fred James, I feel something like the old maid who had never been married. She went to work one day, and the lady for whom she worked said, "Ann, I hear you are getting married." She looked up and said, "No, I'm not getting married, but thank God for the rumor." Now, all of these marvelous things that he has said about me can't be true, but thank God for the rumor. I really don't have adequate words to express the deep joy that comes to my heart tonight in having the privilege to come here to be a part of this great and significant meeting. I guess there are many things that one could say tonight as we think about this difficult problem of racial injustice which pervades our nation. But I would like to have you think with me for the moments left from the subject remaining awake to a great revolution. Many of you, I'm sure, have read that very interesting and arresting story by Washington Irving entitled Rip Van Winkle. The thing that we usually remember about this story is that Rip Van Winkle slept 20 years. But that is another part in that story that is almost always completely overlooked. It was the sign on the inn in the little town on the Hudson, from which Rip went up into the mountains for his long sleep. When he went up, the sign had a picture of King George III of England. When he came down 20 years later, the sign had a picture of George Washington, the first president of the United States. When Rip Van Winkle looked up at the picture of George Washington, he was amazed. He knew not who he was. This reveals to us that the most striking thing about the story of Rip Van Winkle, not merely that he slept 20 years, but that he slept through a revolution. While he was peacefully snoring up on the mountain, a great revolution was taking place that would change the face of the earth. And Rip knew nothing about it. He was asleep. One of the great liabilities of history is the fact that all too many people find themselves sleeping through great periods of social change, and they fail to achieve the mental attitude that the new conditions and new situations demand. In a real sense, that is nothing more tragic than to sleep through a revolution. Certainly a great revolution is going on in our world today. It is sweeping away an old order, bringing into being a new order. We see it in Asia and in Africa as we listen from afar to the deep rumblings of discontent. I remember when we attended the independence celebration of the new nation of Ghana back in 1957. That night when the new nation was to come into being, we stood there in the midst of some 200,000 people. We noticed a handsome black man as he came out to the platform. He stood before his people, and as he stood there, Kwame Nkrumah said, "We are now the free and independent nation." And at that point I looked over and I saw an old flag coming down. It was the Union Jack flag. And I saw a new flag going up, flag of the new nation of God. And I looked around and said to my wife and Congressman Adam Powell, Dr. Ralph Bunche, who was standing nearby, this is not merely a symbol of a meaningless drama taking place on the stage of history. That old flag coming down is the symbol of an old order passing away. And that new flag going up is the symbol of a new age coming into being. And since that dark night, in March of 1957, some 27 new independent countries have come into being in Africa. This is a great revolution that is taking place in the world. It's taking place in the United States. We need not look very far to see that, because we are all participants in this magnificent drama that is taking place. It is sweeping away the old order of segregation and paternalism, bringing in the new order of justice and integration. I am convinced as I stand before you tonight that the system of segregation is on its deathbed, and the only thing I'm certain about it is how costly the segregationists will make the funeral. So a great revolution is taking place in our nation and in the world. But we are challenged as concerned citizens, we are challenged as Christians to remain awake through this great revolution. And I would like to suggest some of the things that we must do in order to remain awake through this great social revolution. First, we must continue to affirm the immorality of racial segregation. Anyone who feels that racial segregation is right is sleeping through a revolution. Somehow we must come to see that integration is more than something that's taken place in a sort of sociological changing sense. Great theologians, when they've talked about God, have usually gotten around to the point of saying that even God works toward integration. When Henry Nelson Wyman defined God, he said he's a process of integration. When Alfred North Whitehead defined God, he said he's a principle of concretion. When Paul Tillich defined God, he said he's being itself. When Jan Smuts defined God, he said he's a process of holism. And whenever we think of God, we think of a being working to bring the disconnected aspects of reality into a harmonious whole. One great theologian has said that sin is separation. What is segregation but the existential expression of man's tragic separation, his awful estrangement, his terrible sinfulness? Segregation is not only politically unsound, segregation is not only sociologically untenable, segregation is morally wrong and sinful. Segregation is wrong, to use the words of the great Jewish philosopher Martin Buber, because it substitutes an I-it relationship for the I-thou relationship. Segregation is wrong because it is nothing but a new form of slavery covered up with certain niceties of complexity. Segregation is wrong because it assumes that God made a mistake and infiltrated the very being of certain people with a tragic yoke of inferiority. Segregation is wrong because it is a system of adultery perpetuated by an illicit relationship between injustice and immorality. So all over this land, all over this nation, we must make it clear that we will no longer sell our birthright of freedom for a mess of segregated parties. We must make it clear. We must make it clear that we are through with segregation now, henceforth, and forevermore. Now, second thing that I would like to say is this. We must make full and creative use of the freedom out of which they molded a creative pessimism. They looked back across the centuries and took Jeremiah's question mark and straightened it into an exclamation point, and they decided to sing, "There is a balm in Gilead." Heal the wounded soul. That is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. And I know sometimes I see so many of you that I know from Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana and Georgia and other states. And I know so often as we struggle, we feel discouraged. So often we are frustrated in the midst of this and wonder how the whole thing will come out. But somehow we gain a new thing. We begin to cry. Sometimes I feel discouraged and feel my works in vain. But then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole.
This Martin Luther King special is being brought to you by Terrace Garden Nursing Home, located at 1921 Northeast 21st Street. The telephone number is 424-1449. quality care, gracious living, exceptionally personal service, all at Terrace Garden Nursing Home, 1921 Northeast 21st Street, here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. The Martin Luther King special today is being brought to you by the Economy Bingo House, 3613 North Epsom Street, here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Sir Charles Taylor, 6225 Southeast 15th Street. The telephone number is 733-7600. It's asking you to come by. Come by in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. Today, we are listening to the words of Martin Luther King. And someone asked, how was it?